guys, so today I'm going to be talking about another writing related topic, and it's something that I have thought a ton about myself and I've also received some questions about, so I thought it's high time I do this video. And that is writing a book when you have a full-time job. For me, for example, just to give you guys an idea of my personal situation, I have a full-time job. I work a 9 to 6. And I also do YouTube, obviously, which means recording videos, editing videos, planning videos, responding to comments, watching videos. I have a kitten now, you know, I have a husband, I have friends, things like that. You guys probably recognize this kind of situation. And if you're a writer, whether that be a novel writer like I am or any type of writer, if you have some sort of project like that, creative project that you're striving for, but you also have a full-time job, or that could be being a full-time student as well, whatever you have that's sort of supposed to be your priority, it can be really, really hard to find time to write and to sort of balance these two things. Something that you have to do, that's your occupation, you know, that's how you eat, and then you have your project, which if you're anything like me is extremely important to you, and I hope someday can be a part of my occupation, a part of my primary goal, but at the moment it is not. So you're constantly sort of, you know, trying to balance these two things and stuck in this limbo of prioritizing what's good for you now and what you need to do now, and prioritizing what you want to do and what you want for your future. And even if you don't plan on making whatever this project is a part of your full-time future, it's obviously very important to you, and that's the core of what I'm sort of going for here. Something that you have to do versus something that's extremely important to you like that. If you're still watching at this point, I'm going to assume that you can relate to this in some way, or that this interests you on a personal level. So I'm going to assume that we all sort of understand what this feels like, because I know I am not nearly the only one in this boat, but it's exhausting. You know, you come home from work in the evenings and you have maybe dishes to do, laundry to do, family, friends, you know, events like that. But you also want to have time, either every day or a few times a day or whatever your goals are. You want to have time to put into this project and to move the project forward. And I know for me personally, I've gone through phases, I don't want to say phases, that doesn't work, but I've gone through times, I'm just gonna say times, when I've been very productive, and every day for a few days, or maybe every other day for a very long span, I've been able to really pump into my book and, you know, push it forward. And then other times I will go through, you know, sort of a time when several days will pass, maybe even sometimes several weeks, when either I'm too exhausted to move forward in my project, or I'm too busy, I have other things. All this stuff is very important in your life, and it's something that you have to balance, basically. Okay, battery died. Let's try this again. Anyway, all of that to basically say that I know this feeling and this experience very, very well, and you know, it's very dear to my heart. So if this is what you're going through as well, you're not alone. I know exactly what you're going through. I'm still learning. It's still a process. It's something that every individual needs to sort of work out for themselves. But the book won't write itself for you. And if you want to do something, you have to constantly be striving for it. And there's no easy answer. Because we're in this together, and you know, because we all have to figure out a way to make this possible if we want to, you know, get our projects done, then the effort and, you know, the sort of trial and error is the only way we really can. So that's what I've been working on, and I wrote down 4 things that I have tried myself, and some of these things I did get from other people and sort of inspired from other people based on watching videos, or, you know, talking to people, or Twitter, or, you know, wherever else I find my inspiration. And these are things that just, they've worked really well for me, so I want to suggest them to you as well. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is that you set manageable goals. I know I've said this in another video at some point, I can't remember which one it was, but I cannot stress enough the fact that this is sort of, it's gonna make or break you, in my opinion, if you're anything like me. You have to find a balance, because you need your goals to be high enough to where you're actually making progress and to where you're actually going to meet your goal. But you also don't want to set goals that are so high that they're absolutely unattainable, because a lot of people have said this about like New Year's resolutions, for example. If they are so high that you can't possibly attain them, or you'd have to be extremely lucky to attain them, you're never gonna do them. And there's also sort of this, you go into it with a defeatist attitude. You know you can't do it. You know it's gonna be near impossible or impossible to actually achieve, and therefore you often don't try. I am talking from personal experience about this too. This is something I've absolutely done to myself before, and yeah, it doesn't work. The next tip is to prioritize. So like I have already pointed out, we're all juggling a bunch of different stuff, and some of those things are extremely important, like work, for example, like family, especially if you're a parent, if you have a significant significant other, if you have really close friends. These are all going to be different priorities that are competing. So what's very helpful for me is to make a list either in your head or write it down if it helps, but make a list of your priorities basically. So you can have stuff like family and work at the top of your priorities. Those are the things that are gonna come first and have to come first. But then you can have your project, or if you have a couple projects, like for me, YouTube and writing, I have both of those and I have to sort of pick which one goes above. And I think planning this out ahead of time is really good for when you find yourself in those situations where you have an evening and only 1 or 2 hours to do something and 2 things are competing. Which one do you choose? And it just becomes a very simple decision for you. At the same time, while this can help you sort of know when to put your project on the back burner, it's also very helpful in showing you when you should put it above. You're gonna have to put your project high on the priority list if you wanna accomplish it. That's just, unfortunately, that's just the simple truth. Like, you can't put it at the bottom of your priority list and never do it if you want to finish it. It seems super obvious when you say it like that, but it's something that when you sort of have to wrap your head around it in reality, it's a little bit harder to wrap your head around. My next tip is to take notes all the time, constantly. Even if you're doing something else, even if you're at work, even if you're watching TV, you're spending time with family, just be ready to take notes at a moment's notice. Sometimes when your mind is completely on something else or you're completely relaxing, sometimes relaxing is the best time actually, but even if you're focused on something completely different, sometimes your mind just happens to wander. And you can actually have breakthroughs or really good ideas pop into your head when you're not trying, and you do not want to lose those. That is the most frustrating thing in the world. I've done it, you've probably done it, but you know, you're in the shower or you're trying to go to bed at night and you have an idea and you make that horrible mistake of not writing it down. And then you either completely forget you ever had it, or the next morning, the worst part, the next morning or later that day or whenever it is, you remember you had an idea and you cannot remember it for the life of you. So even if you can't stop and have a whole writing session or stop and just have a whole break from whatever you're doing to work on your project, you still can actually push yourself forward and work on your project, make progress, just by writing that note down, just by taking a few minutes, stopping, getting your phone, typing it down on your phone, writing it on a spare sheet of paper and tucking it in your bag and just saving it for later. And my fourth and final suggestion for you guys to try is maximizing every single bit of time that you possibly get. Sometimes we have little gaps in time during the day and it doesn't seem like the right moment to sit down and do a whole writing session or sit down and really focus on something. Maybe you get home from work at 6:30 and you have to leave at 7 to go to a friend's house or to go to a concert or something that evening, and that's only half an hour. It doesn't really feel like the time to sit down, to get all your stuff out, to get focused and to work. It seems like you really don't have time for that. But to be honest, half an hour is actually quite a bit of time depending on what goals you want to set for yourself. For example, for me, when I start a writing session, I like to have at least an hour ahead of me where I can really focus and really pump out a good session. Normally when I get started, it really does last at least an hour, sometimes an hour and a half or 2. I always had this fear of getting into a session and then not having time to finish something, and once I get, you know, on a roll, once I get inspired, I'm not gonna wanna just drop it. So if I don't have a proper amount of time, what I feel like is a proper amount of time, it's very hard to make myself sit down and try to do a session. But that doesn't mean that you can't maximize the time, because first of all, you probably could get a mini session in half an hour if you just limit yourself and tell yourself when you're gonna stop and, you know, set a phone alarm or whatever you need to do. But also you can make progress on your project without actually doing your typical thing, without doing a full session, without doing, you know, whatever you typically do when you make progress. I could work on my plot, for example. I could edit my last chapter, for example. There's a ton of things that I could be doing, and I've started to try to think this way when it comes to my writing sessions. Not everyone has to be formatted the same way, and not everyone has to be the same length of time. So it can be really helpful when your schedule is that tight and pinched to just try to look at those little 30-minute or hour-long gaps a little bit differently than what you might normally, and try to see what you could get done in that, and then make yourself do it. That was a bit brief. I know it was only 4 kind of good tips for you guys, but these are things that I feel like make a huge difference, and hopefully at least a couple of them were new to you, maybe all 4 of them, and can kind of give you something to try for yourself. Of course, let me know in the comments if you have other ones. I would love to know them. Probably other people watching this video would love to know them, and yeah, we can just kind of help each other out with this, because it's a very difficult and daunting task, but it's very, very possible. Best of luck with all of your projects as well. I would love to know some details if you want to share in the comments below as well. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I will see you soon.